Hi guys, welcome back to a new video. Today we're gonna go over Sokka's arc, or at least the beginning of it, and we'll just see a few clips here of how his storyline relates to the first steps of the hero's journey. But first I want to get into just a few details about Sokka. So basically, Sokka is like your regular average guy that has no bending abilities in the series. And if we were to compare him to like a superhero, he would be like a young Batman because, that's the part that people really find interesting about Batman is that he's surrounded by either superhumans or people with superpowers or enemies with superpowers, but he himself doesn't have any abilities. He has to rely on his adaptability in the moment. So separate from that, Sokka represents the classic part of our psyche whose basic desire or focus is survival. In psychoanalysis or in spiritual analysis, this is often referred to as the ego. So he's like your average everyday person just trying to stay alive. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. We're all like Sokka in a way, which is what makes him so relatable. It's just that sometimes it's a little bit less optimal, not being in sync with the flow of life. So Sokka experiences some examples and signs of when someone is living more from their ego structures or their worldly identity, rather than tuning into the flow of life and going with the flow. So some of these examples in the show for him are that he's trying to force things to be his way, or when he happens to continually fall prey to nature's forces. We see this here in the beginning of the first episode when he is trying to get Katara to stay away from the iceberg. He's focused on survival here, while Katara is open-hearted to the unknown because she sees a living being inside the iceberg. Another example very early on is that out of all the people to get sneezed on by Appa, Sokka is the only one that gets sneezed on. And it's these types of like clumsy like coincidences and circumstances that continue to happen to only Sokka throughout the entire series. Okay, so the call to adventure for Sokka is Aang appearing and Sokka feeling that Katara is going to leave the family. Sokka goes back and forth throughout the entire series, refusing his lessons, and he refuses the call and tries to convince Katara not to go with Aang. So basically, the real call for Sokka is the scene where he is completely defeated by Zuko, and he sees that he has absolutely no chance. His real call and teacher is life, showing him his lack of awareness in like the greater scheme of things. So he finally gives in to the call to help Katara on her and Aang's journey. Now there are some clear examples of the types of thoughts our hero can have when being called to adventure, and a comparison we can use is between Katara and Sokka. So Katara's call to adventure starts with her thoughts of things such as her feeling she's getting by or that something is like missing from her life, which of course we all know is waterbending. So in comparison, in Sokka's case, he is often saying things like, we need to stop being selfish and foolish, or we need to stop looking for impossible dreams, things like that. So these are examples of the types of thinking that is basically telling our hero that they're being called to something greater than their ordinary world. So basically, the ordinary world in Joseph Campbell's theory is that it's our everyday life, and Sokka is very enmeshed in his everyday life. He's trying to teach the younger kids how to fight, which often annoys him. And him and Katara have a very mundane life because they're in this tiny little village just helping their grandma. So the ordinary world represents the things that we're familiar with. And basically the call to adventure is what gets the hero to think about having a different life or actually believing that they could have a better life, or it really depends on each hero. But in Sokka's case, he doesn't actually seem to want to leave his ordinary life. And it's a good example of when somebody is basically forced by life and circumstances to make a decision. So he basically goes whether he likes Katara's idea or not. And now the biggest theme we take away from Sokka's journey is basically that he is running away from his own consciousness, his own self-awareness. And this is because that would mean that he would have to face his feelings of insignificance, which we see him deal with later in the series. So basically, as an overview or conclusion, Sokka often comes up against life lessons and resists them heavily with his ego's identity and with his familiarity to like his ordinary world, only to be taught more and more self-awareness each time. So essentially the rest of the stages in Sokka's journey start much, much later in comparison to other characters in the series, because he's basically continuing to go through being called, yet refusing the call, and being called several times until he no longer can refuse these callings and lessons. And that's all I have for you guys today. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any comments, you can leave them below. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Ciao, ciao, bye-bye.